Hello everyone, and welcome back to Etalan. Today's video, I wanted to continue on with the avatar theme from my previous video, where I created my favourite avatar, Kyoshi. In the video, I asked what element you would want to bend. The comments showed there was an overwhelming bias towards the water element, so I wanted to attempt at creating a rendition doll of one of the show's most favourite characters from that element, the waterbending master, Katara, of the Southern Water Tribe. In starting this doll, I decided on a hybrid base. I'll be using the head of a Cleo and the body of a Claudine from the Monster High range. Starting off this custom, I'll be removing the factory paint with 100% acetone and a cotton swab. Starting off the face up, I give her head a spray of Mr. Super Clear Matte Varnish, and grabbing some watercolour pencils, I start developing her face. Katara is from the Southern Water Tribe in the Avatar universe, which the creators have credited as being influenced by Inuit cultures. While planning Katara's face up, I decided to use reference images from Inuit artist Maya. I primarily focused on the face of Greenlandic Inuk musician and actor Nive Nielsen. I'll leave a link to her band, Nive and the Dear Children, in the description below. I'd highly recommend checking out her band if you're a fan of ambient folk music like me. While I will be doing the face up in my style, I wanted to make sure she embodied Inuk beauty and didn't come off looking generic. I decided to go with a semi-fold eye shape like knives. Basically this means in creating a monolith design with creases at the outer corner of the eyes. While the creases are predominant at the moment, I will be lowering the highlight lower and lower to make it less dramatic for the final piece. When choosing a head, I felt the face shape matched really well with Katara's character design. However, the vinyl itself was too light in tone to match her complexion in my opinion. While this could have easily been rectified with airbrushing, I wanted to try practice working on my complexion development skills with soft pastels. So I'll be doing this through colour matching through selective contouring and highlighting. For her blushing, I used soft pastels in browns and pinks to define the shape of her face. I wanted to round off her face a bit to make her look a little bit more youthful. In making her face rounder, I decided to experiment a bit with the blushing placement. I started off her blushing on her jaw and worked the blush up in a half circle up to her nose. When putting pink blush on your face or a face up, you add blush to the areas that you want to push outwards, like a form of highlighting without using direct highlighter. By developing the blushing in this area, I'll hopefully be able to develop a rounder face shape that I'm looking for, while also making her look cute and flustered. For texture, I added medium, dark and peach freckles to her skin. I found this gives the face realism. Skin isn't one solid texture or colour, so adding variations in tones makes a skin look a lot less one-dimensional and gives her character. I developed her new complexion further off camera after I did her hair, going over the contouring and freckles over and over with a new layer. It feels surreal making a Katara doll. For many people who grew up in the early 2000s, Katara was such an important character and a hallmark of our childhood. She was a strong female character who was inspiring and a great role model. She was mentally strong and an avid bender, but was open in showing and working through her emotions and trauma. When planning this doll, I did a lot of research into Inuit faces and culture, so I was able to translate that into my doll properly. While she's important to me as a character growing up, she would have been even more important to those who were the cultural influence for her as a character, so I wanted to make sure that the representation was present. Within the Avatar universe, the colour of your eyes are synonymous with the nation that you're from and the element that you can bend. Green being Earth Kingdom, orange or yellow being Fire Nation, air nomads being grey, and the water tribe, like Katara, being blue. For her eyes, I'll be using watercolour pencils as her base, going in with the paints Vallejo White and Games Workshop Macragge Blue, and the brushes from Winsor Newton Kolinsky Series 7 Sable brushes in 1 and 3. I had to paint most of the iris off camera unfortunately, as my lens couldn't focus that small and I didn't have a macro lens on hand unfortunately, but I'll be showing the designs in the final photos. Once I finished the iris design, I decided to go in with the hair and come back to the face up a little bit later to develop shadows, highlights, and define the line work. Before I moved on to her hair, I worked on the fabric of her clothes. Katara wears a Vietnamese ao dai. In making her ao dai, I wanted to add some water tribe flair to the dress part of the outfit. I found this water patterned canvas fabric and I felt the fabric would be perfect if it was blue. And while I could have gone to the shop to buy proper dye, I decided to just water down some blue paint and work the pigment into the fabric. I felt doing this gave it a really lovely handmade dye finish once dried, and it looked really lovely and homely, as if her gran made it for her. For the skirt pattern, I added some white detailing to both sides of the fabric, later adding some wave designs to finish. I didn't realise until editing that you can actually see in the glass reflection that I'm watching the movie The Mist. I feel like doing steady handwork and watching horror movies at the same time is the only flex that I have. For her shoes, I grabbed some basic boots that I found in my stock box and used some Milliput to modify them. Katara's shoes change a lot throughout the series, but she's most frequently seen in her Nunavut style kamik boots, which is a protective shoe found throughout Inuit cultures. Once the Milliput is dry, I sand it down and paint them brown. Onto her hair, I'll be using 100% acrylic yarn and a dog brush to brush out the fibres. I chose this yarn mixture as the dark brown and medium brown will help the patterns and braids become easily visible once styled. In starting off the style, I mark off where I want the hair loops to go, which will be placed on the hairline directly above the outer corners of the eyes. I separate her hair into 3 sections, and loop a glass bead through the middle strand, braiding thereon to make sure that the bead won't fall out of place. According to the creators of Avatar, Katara's loops were originally meant to be braids, but the design was modified to strands before the pilot, as they found it was too hard to animate. Ironically, I chose braids as it would be too hard for me to keep the loops in place if they were just freely loose fibres. To add some natural flair, I add some loose hair fibres to the edges of her face. I'll later trim these and thin these off with a razor. While I'll be styling her in Book 2 and 3 clothing, I'll be creating her traditional Southern Water Tribe hair. I wanted to keep this traditional character design as it's so iconic to her, but also has a lot of emotional significance to her as a character. That being a traditional Water Tribe style, but the style is also the one that her grandmother wears. In creating the style, I'll be sectioning the hair off in half and tying off the pieces. I'll be creating a basic bun shape by wrapping the hair onto itself and tying it off. For the braid, I'll be creating a basic 3-strand braid. but will be adding loose fibres to the braid as I move down to lengthen and bulk it up. Once I tie off the ends, I'll be pulling the braid to loosen it. For her loops, I'll be pulling them back to the bun. I made sure that the braids were really long as I want them to hang loose just like Katara's in the cartoon. Once I'm happy with the symmetry, I'll wrap them around the bun as a border, securing them off with a gem pin. Once I'm happy with her hair, I'll be reshadowing, rehighlighting and strengthening the lines of her face up. During that time, I blush her body and will be attaching her head. I'll also be doing finishing touches, which means glossing her face and mouth with Vallejo Gloss Varnish. I'll be also adding some gloss to the necklace pendant that I made off camera. I was quite disappointed while editing, as I noticed that the lens that I used for filming wasn't picking up the colour correction and texture work that I did to the skin to its fullest extent. With that and not being able to see the eye design, I gave in and I had to borrow a macro lens for the final shots. I suppose that's the only downside to being a scale model creator. You're always thinking in your head, wait, are they even going to be able to see that? How am I going to film that? And it just kind of embodies your brain whenever you're making things. Once the glossing is done, I assemble her clothes. Katara's aoyai are trousers and a long dress, but I couldn't unfortunately make the dress. I just made it into a top and a separate skirt. The separation, however, will be concealed by her white belting. With the skirt, I added just the last bits of designs, which is a wave symbol. Lastly, I created a little faux leather water pouch. Katara is generally seen with one at all times, with either normal water or healing water, so I thought that was a must for this character design. Once she's fully assembled, I'll take her photos and present to you Katara. Thank you all so much for watching. It truly means so much, people checking out my work. Let me know what you think of her in the comments below, and if you have any feedback or comments on how I can improve in the future. Your comments and feedback are always so appreciated, and I try so hard to reply and read as many of them as I can. As always, if you'd like to see more of this doll or any of my other dolls, make sure to hit the subscribe button and check out my Instagram at Edelon. See you in the next video.